Today I'm going to teach you how to make biscuits. First, you have to gather all of your ingredients. For our biscuit recipe, we're going to need flour, salt, vinegar, milk, baking powder, and butter. As you can see, I have the ingredients already weighed out. We have our salt, our cubed cold butter, baking powder, flour, and I mixed the vinegar with the milk because I like to have buttermilk biscuits, and I don't buy buttermilk, so that's how we make our own homemade buttermilk. There are different methods that you can use to mix your biscuits. You can use a paddle attachment with an electric mixer. You can use a fork. You could use a pastry blender, or you can just use your hands. The first thing we have to do is sift all of your dry ingredients together. So we're going to put the flour in the sifter. Along with the baking powder and the salt. We are then going to sift the ingredients together, which means that we are incorporating air, we're getting rid of any lumps that there may be, and we are mixing the ingredients together evenly. Next, we are going to do what is called the cut-in method. We're going to take the butter. You can use lard, you can use shortening, you can use butter, you can use margarine, or a combination of different fats. And then I'm just going to mix it with my hands. So you'll see I'm covering up the butter with the flour, and I'm just going to squeeze it. And what I'm doing is I'm breaking up the butter into small pieces and causing it to get covered with the flour so that there's little tiny pieces of butter mixed throughout the flour. You mix this until it looks like cornmeal, and maybe have a little couple size pieces like peas that are in the butter. Now that we have this to the point where we want it, you can see the texture. We are going to add our liquid ingredients. Now, by having the butter in lumps like this, you'll still see some of the butter in the biscuits when you're making it, and it creates a very flaky biscuit. So we'll make a well in the middle of our flour. We're going to add our liquid ingredients and just fold the flour into the bowl. When you're making biscuits, you don't want to overmix them. So we only mix until the moisture has been absorbed by the flour. Then we are going to fold our biscuits a few times in the bowl. We'll dump it out onto the countertop and knead it. The process of kneading is where you push the dough, pull it, turn it, push it, pull it, turn it, and you just continue around to get those last little pieces of flour and butter incorporated into your dough. Now, you don't want to overmix your biscuits because you will end up with a very tough biscuit, and you want them to be light and fluffy and flaky. Next, we will lightly flour our countertop. We'll use our rolling pin. And depending on how thick you like your biscuits to be, depends on how thick you roll them out. I like to have a rather thick biscuit, so I leave mine anywhere between 1/2 inch and 3/4 of an inch thick. Next, you can either take a knife and you can cut it into diamonds by cutting it diagonally both directions if you don't have a cookie cutter, or you can cut them into various shapes, circles. We're going to use hearts. Whenever you're going to use cookie cutters, you want to make sure that you're cutting them in a pattern that maximizes the use of your dough, because every time you have to re-roll your dough, you're reworking the gluten, which creates a harder textured biscuit, and you don't want to have a tough biscuit. As you can see, we have our pan already prepared for our biscuits. And then we have our oven preheated to 450 degrees. Now, once you have your biscuits cut out, you can do many things with it. If you would like a sweet biscuit, you can add a little bit of sugar to your dough. You could brush the top with milk and sprinkle it with sugar or maple shavings. You could put cheddar cheese on top of them if you wanted a savory biscuit. You could also fold different things into the biscuit dough at the end of mixing, such as cheese, jalapeno peppers. It just depends on what you want with your dough. If you have any other scraps, if you're working with a larger piece of dough, you can knead your ingredients back together for a second time. I generally don't knead them more than twice though, so I try to maximize the use of my cookie cutter and get as many biscuits as I can the first time. And then the rest of it, I'll just throw away. Now that we have your biscuits all cut and on the tray, we will bake them in the oven for 12 to 15 minutes until they're golden brown, and you can enjoy them.